Hi everyone, and welcome to the Enhancing Clinical Practice and Outcomes stream of the SNOMED CT Expo 2021. My name is Kathy Richardson and I'm a Senior Terminologist at SNOMED International. I'll be moderating today's session. For any questions that you may have, please use the live Q&A within your AirTouch device. We'll be looking to answer the questions at the end of the presentation. I'm now pleased to introduce Victoria Fitzgerald and Nikki Ng from MIMS, who'll be presenting MIMS' journey to offer clinical decision solutions with SNOMED CT and national terminology sets. Victoria, over to you.
Thank you very much, Kathy. So thanks everyone for joining us today. The aim of this session is to talk through our experiences of mapping MIMS drug data to national medicines terminology codes, and also to showcase some of the work we're doing to enable our clinical decision support modules to support both these codes and more within SNOMED CT. But first, to give you a quick background on who we are, the MIMS group has a big presence in Asia Pacific. We're headquartered in Singapore and have offices in 17 countries in the region. Our business footprint goes across several different units. We've got the medical communications, who do medical education, event production, and branded content. We've got marketing platform solutions, drug listing, clinical decision solutions, and healthcare recruitment. My role within MIMS is as part of the clinical decision solutions business unit, and I'm based in Australia. And our goal is really to support healthcare professionals in the safe use of medicines by giving them access to both information and decision support tools at the point of care. And that can be via one of our reference products or with our integrated drug data, which comes in the software from our vendor partners. So I want to talk about structured drug data. MIMS has been curating information for medicine since 1963. So one way or the other, we've had structured drug data for a long time. The model we use now has been around for over 20 years, and it's shared by two different business units. That's the drug listing unit and the clinical decisions solution business unit. It's very, very granular, and that enables us to link our data at the levels which make the most sense for us and for the use cases which we have. For example, we can link information which is used by everyone high up in the model, and this might be something like the ATC codes from the World Health Organization, or HL7 dose forms, or even the drug in sport information from WADA. Further down the model, we can support localization at a country level. So that means that we can have the correct spelling, the correct order of active ingredients, and brand names specific to the region it's being used in. This is a slide of our data model. I'm not going to linger on it because it's a bit of an overload, but you can get the rough idea. So we've got the branded concepts down the left side and the generic down the right, and information can be derived across between the two sides. So in the last 10 to 12 years, many SNOMED member countries have developed their own drug terminologies using SNOMED structures and relationships, and they've made these available via their national release centers. They've done this so that they can create local standards, promote interoperability within the health systems, and give us standardized drug data. So for MIMS to be able to support these, we need to create a map. Currently, we maintain maps to concepts within national code systems from Australia, New Zealand, and Singapore. I should place a caveat here that most of what I'm going to talk about is a bit skewed towards the AMT in Australia, because that's the first map that we did, and also the one that I just have the most interaction and knowledge with. So the use cases for these maps are both internal and external. So internally, it means that we can consume and distribute national ref sets. So within Australia, that might be the state-based real-time prescription monitoring drugs, or the exception lists for the active ingredient prescribing. In New Zealand, similarly, it can be the prescribed by brand flags. Externally, our software partners can use the map in many different ways, but principally we see it used for interoperability between different software systems, also for data analysis, and interaction with national infrastructure projects such as electronic prescribing, both in Australia and New Zealand. It also acts as an entry point into MIMS so that people can access our data and decision support modules, which Nikki will talk more about shortly. In terms of our mapping process, we have a mapper and a proofer, both of whom come from a clinical background, usually pharmacy. we use a tool developed internally, which we call the term server, which was designed for this purpose and has some good functionality for us around version control, editorial checks, and an automap function. The automap is based on string matches, but we can actually include additional parameters for an extra check. So originally for Australia, we used PBS codes when that was part of the AMT data there. We now use ARTG codes, and in New Zealand, we can use FARMAC codes. We update each map monthly, and the version control within the term server will automatically unmap concepts which have changed since the previous month, so that they must be reviewed. And we continue to use those cross-checks when in maintenance mode, so the ARTG codes, the FARMAC codes. So it's not just the initial map, it continually happens. So coming to our lessons and challenges, there's probably nothing here that will surprise anyone. We've seen similar advice around mapping projects before, but you know what? That's because it's true. They're right. So first up, preparation is so key. Study the data, define the scope really carefully, look for edge cases. There's going to be some differences between your terminology. You're going to need to know how to handle them as soon as possible, because as soon as you can make rules, you can apply them. Be consistent. So make the rules and stick to them. So we mapped to the TPP here in Australia because there was most similarity between that and our MIMS packs. It's where our data is the most similar. So we could look at those data points, look for the edge cases and make those rules. Stick to the rules because you don't know how big your map's going to be. For us, we maintain a map of around 12,000 lines. So it's simply not practical to have exceptions in there. It's not, you're going to have several different editors and proofers looking at it. You just have to be super strict. Having said that, you can review the rules. My advice would be review the rules after the map is stable. So if you want to make changes, you may need to make them to several different map concepts, and you need to be able to do it in one go so that it will go through for your next release. Communicate, so key in so many parts of life. When we have a discrepancy, the first thing that we do is investigate internally and see if there's something we need to change. If we don't feel that there is something we can change internally, then we might contact the ADHA who maintain the AMT. Generally, we'll batch up those queries so they're not coming in dribs and drabs. And we found those open lines of communication really helpful. The guys at ADHA are very responsive, and between us, we've managed to close the gap of unmappable products. Last thing that I would say is be practical. Just keep in mind that this is not an academic exercise. The map is for implementation, and ultimately it'll affect clinical practice. Try not to use the too hard basket. Solve the problems when you can, especially by doing, as I said earlier, that communication, going back and forth, just making sure that what you can do is the best that you possibly can. So challenges, the main challenge is that terminology will just differ inherently. There are different design needs and rules. So there's always going to be some slight tweaks. For us, our main difference that we have with the drug models is around items with more than one product in there. So a multi-item product, like a contraceptive with 3 different strengths, that kind of thing. The modeling is just slightly different within the AMT and NZMT and within the MIMS data. The burden of maintenance, another challenge. So in Australia, it takes us about 8 man-hours a month to maintain the map. It's not a particularly complex process, but just those hours do add up. And we have to be mindful of it when you're going to create a map in the first place, that maintenance will be required. And finally, the timings and update schedules, which don't always match up. So we have a problem here in Australia that our release date is before the release date of the AMT. So there's always a little bit of a lag. In New Zealand, the timings are a little easier, but it does involve some weekend work to keep that caught up when we can. So that's the end of my part of the presentation. I'm going to hand over to Nikki, and she's going to talk to us more about more exciting things about how we can implement SNOMED and AMT into our decision support.
All right, thank you, Victoria. So my part will be sharing on how MIMS has started the journey to extend MIMS clinical decision solution to support AMT and NZMT. We started off with AMT purely because we have a lot more established map done. So we did a few rounds of studies on how to relate the MIMS drug interaction concepts to the AMT and NZMT. There were quite a few challenges. Okay, one of the things was to look at what were the supported AMT and NZMT that is most compatible to our drug interaction concepts. Okay, the other part was really on the technical side of things. How does the MIMS CDS able to support AMT and NZMT codes within the algorithm? Okay, so this is a diagram just to illustrate a little bit better on how the drug interaction at MIMS concept works. So we do need to have two prescribing concepts here. I am using two products to illustrate. For interaction to work, we do need to have the active composition group or the active ingredient plus a product route of administration. So if you look at product 1 on the left-hand side, so I've chosen Vytorin. So in MIMS concept, we are able to link it to ezetimibe and simvastatin. So two active ingredient plus the product route of administration, which is oral. In the product 2, diflucant, it is able to retrieve fluconazole and oral, and this will then intersect and retrieve the simvastatin oral versus fluconazole oral drug interaction monographs. Okay, so that's on the MIMS side of things. And if I look at the AMT concepts and which are the more relevant concepts that we can map to, we did consider a few. So for example, the TPP in the AMT concept. So here, this is like Vytorin 1010 tablets in a pack of 30, sorry. We also look at TPUU, and we did consider, retrieving or deriving the substance information from TPUU. However, we also notice there is still missing piece of information, and that is the product route of administration. So after looking through how this will work, it was then decided that we will tap on the earlier mapping work done by Victoria and team that is using the TPP linking to MIMS product or MIMS pack, which will then retrieve our own internal concepts and to get the drug interaction monographs. So that was some of the decision made. So, yep, we have decided to tap into the MIMS product to the AMT or the NZMT mapping. Okay, some of the lessons learned here was really to what extent, how do we also extend support to other AMT concepts. Remember, there were TPP, there were TPUU. In fact, there is also MPP, MPUU, and etc. So those were some of the considerations that will be put forward in the next phase of our project. We will also be looking at how to support AMT and NZMT codes natively within the drug interaction algorithm. Okay, moving on, we also did a pilot project studying how to support the allergy check using the SNOMED. So here, as an initial phase study, we did use the Australian Adverse Reaction Agent REFSET, so the ARAS REFSET. The objective of this project was to assist assisting patients' allergen records, which were then documented using this REFSET. How would they prompt the MIMS allergy check successfully? Okay, let's look at some of the challenges that we faced. While doing this, one of the things we did notice was the REFSET has a mixed concepts between substance, products, and as well as physical object. We then compared to the MIMS allergy concepts, and it was then decided the best way to do is to limit our map to the MIMS active composition group or the MIMS allergy classes. The other thing that in fact probably was the biggest challenge was in the group concepts that were actually within the REFSETs. For example, the macrolide antibacterial, the ACE inhibitors. Some of these group concepts, they are not a mirror image or the mirror concepts equivalent to the MIMS allergy. The descendant concepts from, say, the macrolide antibacterial, which includes things like sirolimus, that doesn't fit very well in the MIMS allergy concept. So some of the solutions we then ended up tapping into was to map to multiple concepts in MIMS, okay? Either map it to different MIMS allergy classes, just so that we make sure we had cover trigger all the allergy check that is necessary. The other thing that we also noticed was there are quite a lot of, I won't say a lot, but some the unmappable concepts. Here I have an example of Coxiella burnetii IgG. This is actually an substance used in Q fever diagnostic tubes. It's not even in the Q fever vaccine. So with a whole bunch of these unmappable concepts, we decided there are quite a few things we can do. Either we feedback to the end users, clinicians in this case, to really think about, looking at other more suitable SNOMED codes to map assay or select as a document for allergen. The other things are certain concepts are just simply too broad. For example, the piperazine derivatives, which is really broad for an allergy checking. Here at MIMS, we are also advocating for clinicians to consider mapping or documenting allergen using trait concepts, particularly for things like the vaccines, because they do have certain formulations or excipient information that is specific at the brand level. Okay, so now I would like to do a short demo of a video that how this project has now came into play. Okay, over to the video. And a short demonstration on showcasing how the AMT codes are being used to run drug interaction check in MIMS web services. Okay, based on some of the earlier work done mapping MIMS product to the TPP codes, I can now search product using the AMT codes specifically at the TPP level. Okay, so let's try one. Okay, so with this, I can call out, as you can see, the Litigard 250 milligram tablet. And let's try another one. Okay, so this is the Expo HCT, okay, with the corresponding TPP codes. I want to clarify here that the MIMS web services can support MPP codes, so that's for generic prescribing. But for this demo purposes, I'm just going to look at these two concepts. And let's run the check. And as you can see now, it is able to retrieve two drug interaction monographs. So the first one is between lithium carbonate and the hydrochlorothiazide. And you can see the severity level, the documentation levels, actions to be taken, the specific details of the interactions, as well as the references. Okay. Then this is the second drug interaction monograph between valsartan and lithium carbonate. With, again, the corresponding details. All right, so moving on, let's go on to look at the second pilot project that we were trying to do. So in the second project, we attempted to map Australian ARAS refs to MIMS allergy concept. So let's look at in the allergen, if I can just add on to the SNOMED code, 3270004, and that will brings up the penicillin antibacterial. That's the allergen class. If I go on to prescribe a drug using the SNOMED concept again, so I have Zinet tablets, and let's run the check. And here you can see that it is able to call out the corresponding cross-sensitivity drug allergy check. So this is between allergen, penicillin, which is a group, and this is the prescribed medicine that contains cefuroxime belonging to the allergy class cephalosporins. And this is the corresponding references for this cross-sensitivity check. So there you have it. This is a very short demonstration on how SNOMED codes, some of it is still in the pilot stage, how it can be used to support MIMS clinical decision solutions. Okay, so I hope you like the short demonstration, and I would like to reiterate that MIMS is committed to support partners to bring CDS to SNOMED-enabled systems. And just to share a little bit about the road ahead for MIMS in terms of SNOMED. So we are looking into extending drug interaction check to support other national codes. We are also starting the project to map MIMS allergy concepts to SNOMED codes. In fact, the next project on the pipeline is also for MIMS drug health module to support SNOMED CT codes. Okay, thank you everyone for attending today's session, and visit us at the MIMS exhibition booth, and keep in touch, and do visit us at developer.mims.com.
Can I ask that the attendees just give us a moment now while we switch from the pre-recorded content to the live content, and then we'll look at answering questions. And just a reminder that this session will be available for the next 3 months on the event platform. Thank you. Hi everybody, we're live now. So thank you very much for your presentation, Nikki and Victoria, that was great. Now, for the attendees at the session, you should find on the bar at the bottom of your window a live Q&A section where you can ask questions. So please type them in, but I'll get us started. So Victoria, in your part of the presentation, you mentioned about some of the examples being too hard and trying to avoid the too hard basket. Do you have an example you could use of something that was quite challenging to map? Or have I put you on the spot?
No, it's generally things, because of where we map, often what we find is pack sizes. So we might find everything is the same, but the AMT term has a pack size of 1 and the MIMS term has a pack size of 10. And it's really tempting to just map them because you want to get that link there. You want to be able to get people to enable them. But we learned that you just can't do that. You have to resolve it. So we'll go and then try and find and basically see, is one of us wrong? What is the correct pack size for this product? And then we'll work it through that way. So that's why I say kind of going back and forth, going to our own team internally, saying, can we just get in touch with perhaps the manufacturer, make sure that what we've got is the correct information. If we're sure that what we've got is right, then we'll pass that information on to the ADHA guys who look after the AMT and request that they will then create a new concept for it. So that's the most common type of scenario. Occasionally we've had ones where perhaps we might describe it differently. So we might describe it, for example, using millimoles, and then the AMT is described using milligrams. But often, to be honest, as long as we can work that out, we can see that they are actually the same, and we will still make that map.
Okay, thank you. Now, Nikki, you mentioned looking at some other national codes with a drug interaction check. Did you have some more information on that?
We're still in a very early stage on exploring. But as mentioned by Victoria, we already have a mapping to Singapore Drug Dictionary. So that logically, likely will be the next thing that next country to explore. Of course, there are also other countries with upcoming national drug codes that we would like to work with. For example, the Thailand, I think India also have a national drug code that we would also like to explore, provided if we finish our Australia and New Zealand integration.
Okay, thank you. And one more for you, Victoria. You talked about the multi-ingredients and needing to manage the difference between the AMT and MIMS. Could you talk a little bit further about that?
So that really happens higher up the drug model. So as I said, we map at that TPP, and that's because we go up one level to the TPUU or the MPUU, particularly the MPUU, and for those multi-item products. So our favorite test case is something like Nexium HP7. There's 3 different drugs packaged separately within one package, and we have a concept which captures that with each one there, and the AMT does not. It has them as 3 separate concepts, which are then bundled together when they become a pack at the pack concept level. So they're the same for probably 90+%, where there's only one item in there. But for those multi ones, we just have to be a bit careful about how we would match them. And that's why we actually do that mapping further down at the moment. But obviously we want to support the whole thing. With the deriving through, there can be some little niggles around there.
Okay, thank you. Now we have a question from Alistair from New Zealand. What would you change about the New Zealand AMT if you could? So the New Zealand drug terminology and the Australian drug terminology.
The most truthful answer I can give you to that is the release date. Make it earlier. In general, I think it's good. They're both very similar. The structures are very similar, and they're very nicely structured and consistent with the way that they're assigned, which makes it quite straightforward to navigate and to anticipate as well. So when we're building new concepts, we can, wherever possible, try and build them so they're going to be the same, because we want people looking at terminology, MIMS or terminology, using those systems to see the same things and not get kind of jarring differences.
Okay, so
maybe I'll just add one more thing. I think most of the time I feel AMT and NZMT is quite or as perfect as it can. Perhaps there will be certain other attributes that we can add on. For example, in my case, like when we're doing the drug interaction algorithm, I do require the product route of administration as one of the attributes. Perhaps some of the new, like tiny little things that could facilitate a CDS to be more relevant.
Okay. Well, was there any final questions? We have just under 2 minutes to go. Okay, I'm not seeing anything coming up in the chat. So I just wanted to thank you again for your presentation, Victoria and Nikki. It was very good. And I'd like to encourage the participants in this presentation to contact you if they have any further questions via our hub. And I want to thank everybody for dialing in, and I hope you've enjoyed our first of many presentations. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.